The Old South, a lost time. A time lamented by Southern writers. Their world was off balance. A perfect old time was lost. Not so much for Flannery O'Connor, though. Yes, the world was still off balance. There was still war and society was still changing. Her stories are full of the violence of change. But after change, why go back? Why seek after a world no longer attainable? O'Connor found no value in nostalgia. Even more than being a Southerner, though, O'Connor was a devout Roman Catholic, so that living through this time of change, she needed to deal with this imbalance by reconciling her thoughts on society and the human condition with her own faith. Because of this, in O'Connor's fiction, imbalance becomes the necessary state preceding the state of grace, as the change causing imperfect characters to drop the obstacles they hold against grace, shocking them suddenly into the right disposition to receive it. While the imperfect character regards him or herself as just or saintly in the beginning, this person's imbalance is transformational, leading to true sainthood and coming through the actions of an inadvertent prophet. This prophet upsets the balance and becomes a sort of a sacrament, a visible sign of invisible grace without even trying, accidentally becoming the channel of grace. This dichotomy of false saint saved by inadvertent prophet administering sudden grace holds true throughout O'Connor's fiction. Imbalance to O'Connor is thus really a necessary state for self-improvement, applicable in both her religious context and in her wider society. Let's look at a few examples. In A Good Man is Hard to Find, the grandmother, our protagonist, is our false saint who cares little for others, is nostalgic about the old days, and thinks of herself as a lady, till she meets the very man who avows that Jesus thrown everything off balance, the dangerous misfit who upsets her balance and brings her to grace. Begging for her life, she goes from her old delusions, saying, "You wouldn't shoot a lady," but finally accepting him, saying, "Why, you're one of my babies. You're one of my own children." She accepts him, yet the misfit still kills her, but avows that she would have been a good woman if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life. This shock, he means, was the only thing that could tip her balance far enough to change her completely away from her own falsity, making the misfit an unexpected prophet and sacrament administering grace. Making the false saint and prophet dichotomy clearer, we have A Circle in the Fire. Here our saint is Mrs. Cope, a woman rather like the grandmother, believing herself saintly, who says that I can always find something to be thankful for, but constantly fears for herself that her woods are on fire. We have Mrs. Cope's daughter, too, a disrespectful child accustomed to scowling and not answering or glaring up at her mother. They are both thrown off balance by three boys who come in for an uninvited visit, with their leader wearing an ominous sweatshirt with a faded destroyer printed on it. Mrs. Cope is not entirely hospitable to them, and they overstay their welcome, riding the horses, letting out the bull, and throwing rocks at the mailbox. They save their biggest shock for last, though, as they decide the whole place is theirs, with one saying, "I'd build a parking lot on it or something." So they burn the forest down, and the daughter cannot stop them. They intend ill, but accidentally cause grace. At the end, both mother and daughter stare at the rising flames, and the child stared up at her mother's face as if she had never seen it before. It was the face of the new misery she felt, while she could hear in the distance a few wild high shrieks of joy, as if the prophets were dancing in the fiery furnace, in the circle the angel had cleared for them. The boys are literally prophets, there to bring about this transformation of these two false people by displacing them and throwing them off balance. This prophet characterization is the strongest in the displaced person, our final example. Jesus thrown everything off balance, says the misfit, and this applies perfectly to Mr. Guizak, a Polish refugee. He comes to the farm of Mrs. McIntyre, who believes that after what those people had been through, they should be grateful for anything they could get, and there completely upsets the balance of life. First that of the other hired workers, with hired woman Mrs. Shortley suspecting that as a Catholic, the man must have salvation got from the devil. He does his work well, though, and soon the Shortleys are driven away. Mrs. Shortley, his most severe denouncer, dies in a sudden moment of clarity, knowing that now she is displaced in the world from all that belonged to her. But this is not the end. Mr. Guizak comes to completely upset the balance around here by defying social order, arranging for one of the black farmhands to marry his niece. But to Mrs. McIntyre, it simply can't be done. Also, Mr. Shortley returns with a new insight that Mr. Guizak is an enemy, for all men was created free and equal, and I risked my life and limb to prove it. Gone over there and fought and bled and died and come back on over here and find out who's got my job. Just exactly who I've been fighting. So everyone's balance is upset, and so as always it ends in death. Mr. Shortley accidentally kills Mr. Guizak with the tractor, and Mrs. McIntyre now has her own moment of clarity, just like Mrs. Shortley, that she was in some foreign country where the people bent over the body were natives, and she watched like a stranger while the dead man was carried away. She too is thrown off balance and becomes a displaced person herself. The displaced person accomplishes just what the misfit says of Jesus, upsets the spiritual and societal balance, but leads those around him to enlightenment through inadvertently channeling grace. And this is what holds these stories together. Everyone must be thrown off balance. Everyone must be displaced out of their own carelessness. The theme of displacement is everything for O'Connor. O'Connor's world was a world off balance, in a region still holding on to its past, in a world ravaged by war, with a humanity stuck in its own ways. But she didn't want to go back. For change is a movement towards spiritual rebirth, a removal of the obstacles preventing grace. The first step is being thrown off balance.